It was an election of sorts, but there was only one candidate, Yemen's long-serving Prime Minister. And yes, he won. But is this what a year of protest and hundreds of deaths were meant to achieve? Hello and welcome to The World This Week with me, Phil Rees. US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton congratulated the people of Yemen for, quote, a successful presidential election. A high turnout, some reports claim as much as 80%, went to the polls to replace Yemen's autocratic ruler, Ali Abdullah Saleh, who'd been in power for 33 years. Well, the election was short on candidates. The only person on the ballot was Vice President Abdurrabbu Mansour Hadi. He already became acting president in November as the result of a power transfer brokered by the Gulf Cooperation Council after months of protests. So what's this election really about? That's our first debate today. In part two, what can you buy for $1.3 billion? Well, if you're the American government, you hope you can secure the loyalty of the Egyptian army. That's how much they are paying in military aid each year. But a confusing controversy between the two countries has sprung up over aid workers. What does it tell us about relations between the US and post-Mubarak Egypt? More on that in 25 minutes. But first, a 67-year-old President-elect Hadi, who, by the way, is a former British-trained army officer, was recently promoted to Field Marshal, and he's been Vice President since 1994 and is running for a 2-year term as President on pledges of improving security and creating jobs. But he's never had much of a power base, and Yemen is rife with political problems. Even before last year's pro-democracy upheaval, Ali Abdullah Saleh faced a separatist movement in the south, sectarian tensions in the north, and the growing presence of what some Western officials describe as al-Qaeda's most dangerous affiliate. That's called ACAB, al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. Well, for some, particularly in the once independent South, Hadi is too closely tied to Saleh's rule to represent any change. What's more, a number of Saleh's relatives still hold power in the Yemeni security forces. The election, and according to some, is designed to legitimize a deal brokered by Saudi Arabia and endorsed by President Obama. A trip was engineered which sent Saleh to the United States for medical treatment after surviving an assassination attempt. Well, while Ali Abdullah Saleh will no longer be president, what else will change? And does this election point to the Arab Spring's deeper meaning? Well, before we find out about that and discuss these matters, here's Huriel Haddad.
Yemen began a new era without Ali Abdullah Saleh this week, after an uncontested election gave his deputy the power to launch reforms in a country facing an economic meltdown, a tenacious al-Qaeda wing, and rebellions in the north and south. Tuesday's election, which was praised by Washington as a milestone in the country's transition to democracy, propelled Abdurrabbu Mansour Hadi to the presidency of one of the poorest countries in the Middle East. After a day of jubilation in the capital Sana'a, many Yemenis said they were hopeful for a better future.
نرى الخير في الانتخابات هذه كاملة ونأمل من الحكومة الجديدة والدولة الجديدة برئاسة عبدالرب منصور هادي أن يحقق آمال الشعب هذا.
أنا أحس إنه تم المساواة بين جميع مواطني اليمن، ما فيش تمييز، هذا أملي ولهذا انتخبت.
Although Hadi's victory is assured, high turnout would give him the legitimacy he needs to carry out changes outlined in the Gulf-brokered power transfer deal, including the drafting of a new constitution, restructuring the armed forces, and preparing for multi-party elections in 2 years' time. An official on Tuesday estimated turnout was as high as 80%, but the new leader's legitimacy is being questioned by Shia rebels in the north and separatists in the south, where the vote was marred by violence in which at least 9 people were killed. Despite opposition to Tuesday's election, Washington wants a united Yemeni leadership as part of its fight against al-Qaeda. The uprisings against Saleh was part of a wave that convulsed North Africa and the Middle East. He's become the latest autocrat to be ousted in a wave of unrest that began in Tunisia more than a year ago.
Thank you very much, Huriel, for that report. Where I'm very pleased to have in the studio Ambassador Mohammed Kubati, former advisor to the Yemeni Prime Minister, now from the Yemeni National Council, their foreign affairs spokesman. We also have Galal Makhtari from the Independent Yemen Group. Thank you for joining us. And finally, on the phone from the capital, Sana'a, we have Hakeem Al-Masmari, the editor-in-chief of the Yemen Post. Could I start with you, Hakeem Al-Masmari? Obviously, we saw in our clip there quite a lot of confidence, quite a lot of jubilation. I mean, how can we square that with the fact that there was no genuine election?
People are fed up with the regime of President Saleh. People voted for Hadi, not for the love of Hadi, but hatred against Saleh. People want change. They are fed up with the crimes and corruption the country has been facing for the last 32 years. So Hadi has to understand that people right now are giving him his vote or their vote and are waiting for a return. If Hadi cannot give them something in return, they will also revolt against him sooner than he expects.
Well, are you confident that actually this will change things? Because obviously Ali Abdullah Saleh's relations are still, in the security apparatus. And, Hadi himself, of course, was part of the regime for many years. So, I mean, this doesn't appear to be a great shift in what we had before, apart from, of course, the main man gone.
We are not worried about Hadi or President Saleh or former President Saleh or his family. Right now, Change Square is full and packed with students and youth activists. That's the worry right now. These activists have vowed to stay there, to stay in the squares until they demand that. Hadi has no choice to listen to their demands, or else he will be ousted as well. As long as the youth movement continue to stay in Change Square, Saleh, the dictator of 32 years.
I'm sorry, I think we may have lost him there. The line deteriorated. Apologies for that. We'll try and get Hakeem Masmari back in a minute. Ambassador Gubati, tell me, do you see this as a milestone in Yemen's history? I mean, has it actually changed much? I mean, obviously, in one level, it has.
It has the potential to become a turning point. It has the potential. But as your report and Hakeem as well has noted, this would be quite a lost chance and a futile exercise, the whole exercise of getting nearly 7-8 million people there to vote for Hadi. They didn't vote for the man only, they voted for change. If the change only doesn't actually encompass the change of the regime, if it only turns out
why should this man bring change? I mean, he's been vice president for what, 7 or 8 years now? I mean, he's been a close associate of Ali Abdullah Saleh. It doesn't seem to me a great symbol of change.
Well, he came as a caretaker for an interim period for an agreed agenda. That agenda includes the restructuring of the armed forces, which will give him much more power, for if he wills to make change. He has got now a public mandate of 7 million people. And after that, now, in the next 2 months, there would be the national inclusive comprehensive national dialogue. That's the thing which is going to make change. That dialogue conference is aiming at getting and framing a new constitution for a democratic and civil state, a federal state, a state built on the principle of parliamentary democracy rather than a presidential system. So there are many, I know there are
many. You sound very upbeat.
No, I'm not upbeat. I'm showing the amount of challenges which Abdurrabbu Mansour is facing, the amount of challenges which all of us are facing. And that's why I agree with Hakeem. The youths are there in the streets. They have voted for change. It's quite obvious that even the leader of the youth, the most prominent lady, Tawakkul Karman, she went and voted. She didn't vote for Abdurrabbu. She went and voted for a change. So this is a chance for a turning point.
Jalal Makhtari, I mean, obviously, historically, it's a turning point in the sense that Ali Abdullah Saleh, certainly nominally he's not president, but I've seen him even speak about setting up a party to run again. I mean, is his shadow still casting itself over Yemeni politics?
Well, he may have gone, but his system hasn't. And it's going to to stay on for quite a while. You said, Mr. Kubati said that it's a turning point. It may be a turning point, but for those who imposed this settlement on the Yemeni people, there is no legitimacy in the Yemen at the moment except the legitimacy of the youth movement.
So you mean this is imposed by whom?
it's imposed by the superpowers, by the regional powers on the Yemeni people.
We're talking about the Gulf Cooperation Council now, led by Saudi
Council,
Arabia,
the Americans,
Qatar,
and of course the British and all the European thing. Obviously the area for them, the Yemen, is extremely important from a security point of view. You've got Bab al-Mandab on this side, you've got Saudi Arabia on the north, and the Gulf and countries, and an unstable Yemen is obviously going to bring even more trouble. The Gulf countries are, in my view, are at a dilemma. They don't want a Somalia on this side of the Red Sea, but also they don't want to see a fully fledged democratic situation in Yemen at their doorstep, because we're talking about...
democracy is, of course, unreliable, is it?
Well, it's unreliable, but it's also threatening their own autarkic kind of rules and so on.
So they're perhaps trying to manage the change, are they? That's the key thing.
They are managing the change, and talking about the the stages in the roadmap that they're talking about. Or Dr. Kobati talked also about restructuring of the army.
Well, will that happen though? Do you think?
I don't think so. I think the Americans have got that portfolio. Only yesterday there was an article in the Washington Post whereby the Americans said that they are pledging more support or more aid, but at conditions. So the Americans have invested billions of pounds on that army. Half of it obviously has gone to the pockets of the president and his allies and so on. The other half, or the other money, has gone into training an elite group, ostensibly against the Qaeda.
Of which Ali Abdullah's nephew is in charge of that.
Which is in charge. And obviously the Americans are not going to let that go.
I mean, Hakeem Al-Mazmari, you're with us again. I mean, there's a great deal of skepticism, though, that actually some of the realistic change... Oh, I'm sorry. I think he's just gone. I thought he was back. Well, afraid the lines too. I mean, well, let me put to you that question then, because obviously Galal Mekdari is maybe a little bit more skeptical that the army, for example, let's talk tangibly about the army now. It's divided. There's, for example, General Ali Mohsen, who was a real, rival, although one-time ally of Ali Abdullah Saleh. He still commands a major unit, the Armored Division.
60,000 of them.
60,000. Well, I mean, that's a fairly ominous situation, isn't it?
Phil, that's why this formula came out, because there was a danger that the country could easily move towards internal strife, civil war. You have got the army completely divided longitudinally, yes, for sure. And that's why the restructuring of the army and the security forces is quite an imperative and important thing. Which
but Galal doesn't think that basically, despite his mandate in the, as it were, the poll, the election, or whatever you want to call this, rubber stamp, despite that,
okay, let me point out.
To do it. I mean, after all, he hasn't got an army. He hasn't got a power base, has he?
Well, he is sided. Obviously, Ali Abdullah Saleh at one time didn't want Abdurrabbu Mansour to come as the vice president. He was at one time intending to. He was aiming at getting one of his friends in Aden, who is the man in charge of the southern flank of the army, and he was going to promote him to be the vice president at one time. So Abdurrabbu Mansour has been all the time, and it has been known that he's much more closer to Ali Mohsen. This is a fact known. I know the man, I come from inside, and I know he was much more closer to this. And that's why both sides have agreed on this man to become a broker.
Because you mean he has links to both sides of the military?
Yes.
Well, listen, I mean, we've got back on the phone now Hakeem Al-Mazmari. Apologies for these. I know the phone line is not too strong today. We're talking about the army. We're talking about, in the future, attempts to, as it were, restructure the army that is being proposed. Do you think the President-elect Hadi has the power to achieve that?
Yeah. we've been working very closely with Hadi's office over the last couple of months, and we started to realize that there is strong friction between President Saleh, or former President Saleh, and current President Hadi. There was strong friction. Hadi is very serious in getting rid of President Saleh of power, but now he has one main obstacle. His family is still in control. This will be a very strong obstacle for Hadi, and it will show if Hadi is serious in listening to the demands of the people, or if he's a puppet for the ruling family. So time will prove and time will show who Hadi stands, and whatever Hadi does, we'll stand with him or against him. Because as I said before, we youth are still on the players, the same youth that ousted Saleh from power are the same youth who can oust and really be Hadi, of the people.
Do you believe, and I know the phone line isn't too good here, Mr. Masmari, but do you believe that in any way that the West is, and perhaps the GCC and Saudi Arabia, are kind of managing affairs fairly closely, or do you think they have a life of their own?
The West has been trying very much to help Yemen come through this process, not because it loves Yemen, but because it's scared and worried that the region could collapse and Iran could have a strong play in the country. The West is now forced to help Yemen, and will be forced to help Yemen even more by spending hundreds of millions of pounds over the next couple of years. Yemen is needed to be stabilized for the entire region to be stabilized, especially today with strong warnings from Iran, Syria, going against the Western interests. So we do expect a lot of support for Yemen, but the U.S. counter-terror war on Yemen will take a backlash because Yemenis have now understood that Al-Qaeda has only improved or gathered more power during the U.S. war on terror on Yemen. Years ago, there were only tens of Al-Qaeda members in Yemen. Today, there are thousands. The U.S. has not been very good at fighting terror. The U.S. trained counter-terror forces were in the houses protecting President Saleh rather than fighting terror in Abiyan or in Shafaqat.
So, listen, Hakeem Masmari, thank you so much for joining us. I'm afraid the phone line is very bad. We apologize to our viewers there. We got a gist of what you said, but I do apologize for that. And hopefully, next time we can get a better line to you there in Sana'a. Thank you, Mr. Masmari. I mean, we were talking there about Al-Qaeda at the end of it, and of course we hear a lot about Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. We hear about, obviously, at one time, Anwar al-Awlaki, their head, who was, of course, killed by U.S. drone now. I mean, will Yemen carry on to just allowing U.S. military to do what it wants on its territory?
One of the earliest promises which Abdurrabbu Hadi gave just only 2 days ago, before the referendum, he said he promises to wipe out Al-Qaeda from Yemen. We know that this game has been being played by Ali Abdullah Saleh. He was in somehow managing these people. He got really long, term relations with them since 1994. All of the Afghan Arabs who came back, they were under the auspices of Ali Abdullah Saleh being played.
He was playing a double game, basically, with the United States.
But let me tell you, the thing which Abdurrabbu Mansour, it has got to be clear, Abdurrabbu Mansour is coming with complete support, regional, international, global, and now he has got a mandate from the people. If it will turn out he's not going to get less than 7 million votes. That's nearly double what Ali Abdullah Saleh got through all the...
Because of the very high turnout we're talking about.
So Abdurrabbu Mansour stands, and there is here a chance. This is the first time we have a chance in Yemen to sort out things which have been pending for the past 70 years. And we have got two Southerners there. Abdurrabbu Mansour, the president, or the and the head of the government, Premier Mohammed Salim Basindwa. So we have got two Southerners. We know for sure that the Southerners are the people who have all the time adopted and actually articulated an agenda for reform in Yemen for the past 70 years. Now we have got these two people there with a lot of support and engagement from regionally and globally. And with this mandate, there is a chance. As I've said, it's only a potential. I've never said this is a potential turning point. But we have got the youths there who will be going on, and most of the people do feel that we have got to give these people a chance, and we have got to give Yemen a real chance within this consensus.
Ghalad Mekhtari, we talked there about a regional division, and I think viewers may, for many years, Yemen was divided between north and south. There was a very brutal civil war, which then was united. I mean, do you think that, with southern representation, as it were, that division perhaps is not as serious as some people make out?
The division between the
north
south
and
north.
south, yeah.
Not really. I think if you look at the whole history of Yemen, the Yemeni people have been united against two basic enemies, external enemies and internal oppressors throughout. Now, if you look at, you talked about civil war. It wasn't a civil war, it was an invasion of the north to the south, really. The Yemen, for thousands of years, have had its own tribal wars and so on, which were all very limited. But there has never been a civil war as such, in the full meaning of it. And therefore, if you like, the scaring people, the scaremongering that the Yemen is going to fall into big civil war is all part of this whole scheme, of managing
and denying genuine democracy.
And denying that. I think that's, I was going to say that we've been many times led into euphoria about what's going to happen next. We're going to lead you to the land of milk and honey and all that. We've done it after the British left, and we ended up with a totalitarian regime that, killed thousands of people, took people's properties and so on, and thousands are all over the world. And then there was the unity, and things were going to be better, and it got even worse. And then after the invasion of the South was completely pillaged by the Northerners, or some
We're talking about the former British colony of Aden, of course. But I mean, do you see though this in a way? And I mean, I think viewers obviously who've been following the Arab Spring since its beginnings in Tunisia will say that the West, once Libya happened, they became involved, having been perhaps wrong-footed in Egypt and Tunisia, and somehow now, fine, these people have gone from North Africa, but when it swept east to the Arabian Peninsula, as in Bahrain and in Yemen, shall we say, a different dynamic unfolded, and the West kind of became involved with its Gulf allies.
Oh, definitely. The Arab Spring has started in the center, if you like, of the middle, but there were, if you like, ramifications in the Maghreb, if you like, what we might call from the Atlantic to the Gulf, this major thing. So it hasn't. It had impacts of sorts. Yeah, and I think the full Arab Spring or the full Yemeni Spring will be achieved when the Arab Spring reaches the Gulf.
But it hasn't. I mean, quick word, final word from you, Dr. Khabati. What do you think?
I think there is something there. There is hope, and let's keep our fingers crossed that.
But is the Arab Spring likely to reach the Gulf and Yemen, in your view, in a full?
I think that's something we shouldn't be actually threatening people that we're going to move or sort of export revolution to them. This is something which is inbuilt within the people there.
If there's democracy in the Arabian Peninsula, it's too damaging for your neighbours, you mean, too threatening.
Stems from the people, is not exported.
Yes. Well, so the Gulf states don't want it, and you're too close.
The people will make the change. Whenever they are ready, they will make it, for sure.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much. All right, well, obviously we wish Yemen well, and unfortunately we come to a short break now. In part two, the politics of aid. When is an aid agency or an NGO a political movement? What about when it's funded by the US government in order to bring democracy to the Middle East? Well, we'll find out more about that in a few minutes. Stay with us.